Hi everyone, I'm Dan Joseph with MRC-TV. Loudoun County, Virginia is one of the wealthiest, most affluent counties in the country, and it's probably the last place you'd expect there to be a controversy over a religious cult. However, that is exactly what the protesters behind me are alleging Calvary Temple here in Loudoun is. MRC-TV came to Loudoun County to talk to former church members who were gathered outside of Calvary about their experiences in the congregation led by controversial pastor Star Scott. Scott began his ministry at the temple in the mid-1980s after moving to Loudoun County from California.
We think that the voice of Satan many times is our own logic, our own will, when in fact you are being manipulated, deceived, and destroyed because you don't know the works of the evil one.
Who is the leader of this church?
His name is Star Scott.
He says he's an oracle of God and that he hears special revelation from God that the congregation does not, and they need to listen to him because he's the authority.
They broke away from the Assemblies of God, so he has no oversight.
He is not like his congregants. His congregants are God-fearing, loving people, most of them, who really have good hearts.
If you talk to people there, you don't hear them talk about God or Jesus, praising him. You always hear them say, oh, pastor said, and pastor this, and, oh, pastor, he's given his life for us.
He is a forked tongue person who talks one way to people and he does another thing.
He's very charismatic, which most cult leaders are.
Would you say this is a cult?
Oh, definitely.
Would you call it a cult?
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you call it a cult?
Yes.
I believe it is.
You'd say it's a cult?
It's an absolute cult.
They're not permitted to use internet or cell phones or anything. It's very cult-like.
And the people don't know it because they don't hear the stories because they control the information.
When Bob Scott's wife of, 35, 40 years died of cancer, he married a 19-year-old 3 weeks after she died.
Congregants are encouraged to tithe generously, and Scott's use of church money for personal purchases has made many question his motives. What do you think his ultimate goal is?
Money.
Money.
It's all about him.
And he's worth millions of dollars.
How much money would you say, you might not know this, how much money would you say your family has given over the last few years to this church?
I don't know. Definitely in the tens of thousands.
Okay. He's taking in, you think, quite a bit of money from...
Oh, he's worth millions.
What kind of car did you say he has? He drove in here today?
Porsche Cayenne, and I believe it belonged to Alex Ovechkin.
It's a pretty nice car for a humble pastor, a humble man of God.
He has a Corvette. He's got like 2 or 3 dragsters. He's got 2 motorcycles.
And these guys looked at me and they said, hey, preacher, how did you get the money to get these nice cars? So I looked at them and I said, well, they pay me by how good the sermons are.
Far more troubling are the multiple accusations of sexual assault and child molestation against Scott himself and others in the church hierarchy. What are the allegations?
2 girls that were molested.
Can you go a little in depth about some of the sexual allegations?
Well, Chastity O'Connor has gone on record as saying that she was sexually molested by her uncle.
One of them did say it was her uncle, who was a deacon in the church.
Okay.
I have an email from the niece who he molested.
In an April 2008 email obtained by the Loudoun Times-Mirror, Scott's son accused his father of molesting family members on a daily basis for almost 3 years when he was a pastor in California. The assaults continued, according to the email, when the father was a youth pastor at Herndon Assembly of God. Have there been any allegations of sexual abuse against Scott himself?
Yes, it happened 40 years ago in California. His 2 nieces, they were the nieces of his wife, and we believe it happened once here in Herndon. We believe that there's a police report filed, but no charges were ever brought against him.
But according to those we talked to, the abuse is not just sexual in nature.
I was spanked excessively, and a lot of times I wasn't even told what I was being spanked
By...
for. Usually the person that was doing the spanking was either a male teacher, Dan Conzel, or Jeff Hegland.
I was verbally abused by the associate pastor, Ron Zaru. He told me that I'm demon-possessed, that I'm a threat to the society, that I'm a threat to this fellowship, and that I could be the next Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh.
And then he put me in a hospital for a month.
There was child labor.
Child labor. Tell me about that.
There were certain kids who, at some point, if they, were deemed being rebellious, then they would be forced to, do gardening and work in the yards and stuff like that instead of participating in other school activities.
Almost as harrowing were the stories we heard from former church members who were permanently shunned by their family members when they chose to leave the congregation. Some of those family members who are still members of the church today. They tell me that you still have family members in the church.
Yes, sir.
And they're in there right now, assumingly.
Yes.
6 years ago, I left the church, and they told me, we can't make you stay, but if you leave, you forfeit your wife and son.
They made you divorce.
Well, they say that she made the decision.
They actually divorced me from my wife. They've kept me from my wife.
They've divorced you from your wife.
Yes.
She's still in there.
She's still in there.
You were married.
I was married for 3 years. They divorced me.
This is our daughter and our son-in-law.
They're still in there.
Yes, and our 3 grandchildren. We've never seen our 3 grandchildren.
Okay.
We've gotten these pictures off of Facebook.
They encouraged her to get a protective order against me.
They teach the children that if your parents leave, then they no longer want to be Christian. So it's in your best interest to, stay with us if your parents leave.
My oldest son, they told him, one of the youth pastor and captains, they have captains, came to him and said, you need to leave your mother's house in the middle of the night. If you don't, you'll be on visitors, you can't participate, you can't do anything. And 2 days later, my son was gone.
Whether Cavalry Temple fits the definition of a cult or not may be a matter of semantics, but with so many similar allegations coming from so many former church members, it's clear that this fight will go on for some time. For MRC TV, I'm Dan Joseph.